Girl, what is the first line of your notes? What does it say?
Quote, I'm scared. Period. End quote.
This is hard. It's hard.
Yeah, it was hard. I was scared to watch it because I knew this is the kind of thing that's going to stay with me forever. Obviously, it has been since I've known about the story forever. But I just like, how on earth are we going to do this? Rabia, how are we going to get through this documentary?
Rabia, be with us. Rabia, we need you in this our hour of need. Jillian Pensavalli.
Patrick Hines.
You guys, before we get to the episode, we are down to like 30 tickets left for the Pride Show.
I know.
30 tickets!
I know. I can't believe it. And look, you want those 30 tickets. I'm just saying.
It's true.
I know some things.
It's true. You guys, there are surprises we can't tell you about.
It's going to be great.
Saturday, June 29th, New York City. We're covering the Stonewall documentary. We've got drag queens. We've got a fancy comic. I'm doing Pride tours all through the village that morning. Get your tickets if there's any left. And come join us.
We're going to have fun.
Yeah.
It's going to be a nice time.
You guys, breaking news. You guys, we're adding one new level to the Patreon because here's the thing. We've decided that we want to do a True Crime Obsessed after party.
We talk a lot and we want every last second of it to be recorded.
So here's what we're saying. Every time we record after an episode, we chat for 10, 15, 20 minutes. We thought, let's record it. Let's put it up. We're going to make it a $7 level. It's a whole brand new podcast. It's the TCO after party. We're going to do this at least twice a month.
Yeah, if we have things to say, we're going to do it. If we don't, we're going to spare you.
Exactly. But you also, at this level, get ringtones. Ooh. You're going to get the ballad version and the rock star version of the Jillian Pensavalli, Patrick Hines, dun dun dun. And because we asked for text alert, people want your breaking news, we're going to give you that too.
All right. What? You mean like this? Breaking news.
That's a great text alert. And if you're new to the Patreon, you guys, at the $5 level, you get 90 episodes to binge right this second, covering The Staircase, Making a Murderer, The Jinx. What else?
Season 1 of Serial. Madonna's Truth or Dare.
Lorena.
I
mean, it's so much content to binge right this second.
Yeah.
At the $10 level, you get ad-free versions of these episodes. Anyway, check out the after party if you're into it, especially for this episode because I've got a personal connection to the Matthew Shepard case, and I'm gonna tell you all about it there.
Yep.
All right, girl, let's do this.
Okay. Yeah. Is there something I can just grab onto for anger and also just bracing myself for this?
It's really hard, and one of the things I wanted to say was that I sobbed my way through this.
Me too.
But for a different reason. When Matthew Shepard was murdered, I was his age. I was in college, and we all thought at the time this could be any of us. This was before gay marriage. It was still a really rough time to be a gay person in this country. And listen, for a lot of people, it still is a really difficult time to be a gay person in this country. So I approached the Matthew Shepard case at that time, and really since then, from that place. This time, I watched it completely through the lens of a parent.
Yeah.
And that took me completely by surprise.
It doesn't take me by surprise at all.
I'm so used to feeling one way about this case.
Oh, yeah,
And then so to really experience this as a parent. And, I've had the great opportunity to meet Judy Shepard a couple of times. She wrote the intro to the book that I helped write.
Say the name of it. Tell the people.
So many, many years ago, I helped Romaine Patterson, who's featured in this documentary a little bit, write her book. She was Matthew's best friend in Denver. We're going to talk more about this in the after show, and we're also going to talk more about this when we get to this part of the documentary. But I helped her write her autobiography and her story of like being friends with Matthew. And Judy Shepard, Matt's mom, wrote the foreword to the book. And so, I have this sort of like deep personal experience with this case. And again, I'm not trying to connect myself to it. I didn't know Matthew. I don't know anybody other than Romaine in this documentary. I just happened to live in that world while I was helping her on this thing for a couple of years. But like to see it from a completely different perspective, it made me understand Judy and Dennis's journey even better and really see the heroes and warriors that they are to have like survived this. And not just that, but to have given of like their time and energy to really make something positive out of the horrible murder of their son.
Yeah, absolutely.
Matthew Shepard.
I don't know how many times in my life I called him Matthew. It's just always been Matt to me. And he was just my friend.
I can't picture him as an adult. I can't picture him growing up, but that's not the friend I had.
Look, there's my brother. He's awesome. Awesome. Nice.
My son Matthew did not look like a winner. He was rather uncoordinated and wore braces from the age of 13 until the day he died.
What was tied to this fence about a mile outside of Laramie was not a trick, it was real. The battered body of Matthew Shepard, beaten almost to death, barely alive.
Matthew's mother said, please tell everybody who's listening to go home, give your kids a hug, and don't let a day go by without telling them that you love them. They're very grateful that when they last saw Matthew, his last words to them were, I love you.
I am so pissed off. I can't stop crying.
He said it, God hates fags.
One thing must remain clear. Hate and prejudice are not American values.
Why did he become the icon?
Say hi, Mom.
It wasn't because Matt was special. He was very, very special to the people that were close to him. But so has every single person who's been killed. How can it help open people's eyes?
The fact that I haven't come to terms with this is the way it is.
You don't ever think things like that are going to happen to people that you know or that are close to you.
I don't think we could even talk about it until now.
So I want to say I loved this documentary.
Yes, me too.
I thought this was so beautifully made. Michelle, if you are listening to this, I am in awe of you.
Me too.
You are a hero.
We were wondering, like, what is your experience
How
with
did
this?
you know
Like,
how to do this?
yeah.
You're so young and
Yeah,
beautiful.
yeah.
How did you know how to make a documentary?
You know what I think it is? And Michelle, please call us.
Please call us.
I think it's just like she had this calling to do it. It's so personal to her. I don't think she overthought anything. I think she was like, I want to tell my friend's story. This is important. This is what I want to do. Guess what? I'm doing it. She woke up at 6 a.m. every day and she was pounding the pavement and she did it and it was amazing.
Michelle, you're a hero.
Michelle, we love you.
And the thing that I think is so amazing about this documentary, it has such a specific point of view. It seems to me like this was about Matthew's real friends sort of telling their story about knowing him, sort of sharing Matthew's story for the first time, because other versions of the story have been told. Romaine has told her story about doing the Angel Action thing that she did when Fred Phelps and his people came to protest Matthew's funeral. You know, even Judy wrote her own book about her experience being Matthew's mom. Judy and Dennis are heavily featured, but it really tells the story in a new way.
Yeah, and also because there are just there's so much old like video footage of him, which we always talk about.
Oh my God.
These letters that he wrote.
He was a list maker.
Totally.
He liked airports.
Yeah, to all that list, and it's like I like it too. I just don't like to fly, but I like packing, you know. So I felt very connected to him in that moment.
I'm sensitive. I am honest. I am sincere. I am not a pest. I am my own person. I am warm. I love helping. I love smiling. I love being myself. I love learning. I love eating. I love airports. I love hugs.
But it's just he wrote everything down, and you know you're different with your friends than you are with your family, of course.
It's true. Just the photographs that she gets of him. We see the very famous photo of Matthew in that blue shirt. There's video of him unwrapping that as a gift on Christmas morning. Michelle, you gorgeous genius.
Yeah, I see you, Michelle. I see you.
I mean, the hairs on my arm stood up in that moment because that's the most famous image of Matthew Shepard. But all the images that she found, all the home footage that was given to her that she used like so beautifully, I couldn't get enough of it.
Yeah.
Michelle, did I mention that I like this stuff?
Yeah, Michelle. We're very subtle here on TCO.
She's like slowly turning the volume down.
She's and backing away slowly. And we're like, Michelle, come back.
We love you.
Yeah, call Rabia. She knows how to handle this.
Exactly.
She knows how to deal with this.
So it opens with Michelle walking in the prairie of Wyoming. And if you know the case at all, you know that this is where the fence once stood where Matthew Shepard was murdered. So, you know, we hear a little bit of news about Matthew Shepard's body being found.
What was tied to this fence about a mile outside of Laramie was not a trick, it was real. The battered body of Matthew Shepard, beaten almost to death, barely alive. Shepard had been attacked, investigators say, and left for dead reportedly because he told these two men he was gay. Russell Henderson and Aaron McKinney have been charged with Shepard's murder.
Can we talk about Oscar the Stuffed Bunny just real quick? Because I kind of can't handle it. I still have stuffed animals. I had Ellie the elephant, very original, I know. I still have her.
Yeah.
Hip the hippo, I think they're emotional support animals for me. Mike posted the picture in the Facebook group of me watching Tower, and I was surrounded by them because we can't have dogs in the apartment. So when I saw Oscar the Stuffed Bunny, I just say I can't in my notes because I knew he's going to play a pivotal role. And no shade, no jokes. That's very, very true.
Matt had a stuffed bunny.
Oscar.
Yeah.
So he was his best buddy. All I know is suddenly he was there and going everywhere with him, grabbing by the ears and pulling him or holding on to him everywhere he went. He'd be in the car, he'd be in his bed with him, everywhere when he was little.
He had an awesome childhood.
Yes, he did.
Matthew took Oscar everywhere, and he's adorable and sweet and very loved on. He's like the Velveteen Rabbit. Like, Oscar's real, everybody. Stuffed animals come to life. Hello, Toy Story.
So we meet Judy, Matt's mom, and the thing about Judy Shepard, again, I've had the pleasure of meeting her a couple of times. Her voice is very quiet, but she exudes authority.
He just loved people, and he loved making people feel better. It's what made Matt Matt, and when he was little, he started writing poems to the neighbors, and he would leave them in their mailbox. Well, my dad was a postmaster, and he told Matt it's really illegal to leave things in people's mailbox without having put his stamp on it. So he decided he'd leave rocks instead. So he'd find these pretty little rocks, gravel, whatever, and put them in, thinking that they would appreciate that someone had thought to put rocks in their mailbox. Everybody in the neighborhood knew that it was for Matt, and the intention was good.
She's a survivor, and obviously she's found a way to transform her grief into action. And I saw her speak once, and I remember her saying that she had come from dinner where she had let herself have one martini. So she was just a little loose, you know?
A little bit.
Yeah, and it was and she was smiling, Because you think you see this woman and you're like, she's never going to smile again.
Right.
But she did.
Yeah.
And so you see her in this scene, and I love that she's sort of like showing the pictures to Michele, and she shows a picture of Dennis, and Dennis looks so serious, and she says Dennis always looks like he's hungover in pictures.
I was like, I'm sorry, what? Had to rewind that, made sure the closed captions were on.
So Judy tells us that she had like her first inkling that Matt was gay when he was 8 years old.
Right, because Dolly Parton was his go-to Halloween costume, which is fantastic Halloween costume.
I tell this story that his favorite Halloween costume was Dolly Parton, and that might have been a clue. He was Dolly lots of times, and didn't always wait till Halloween to practice.
There's never a bad month to put on your Dolly costume and walk around the neighborhood.
Exactly. So she was like, he was dressing up as Dolly Parton, whether it was Halloween or not. So she kind of had this idea. And she says this thing where she's like, she truly believes, her experience is that, like, when you really love someone, whether family or friend,
Yes. And she says it's like a mother's intuition thing.
Right.
They describe Matthew so much as like outgoing, fun person. He was into politics. He kind of wanted to be famous. He always lit up a room. I'm like, Matthew, we would have been best friends. I just know we would have been.
He was a theater kid.
Totally.
Yeah.
We see him as like Abraham Lincoln at one point.
I know.
Matt was the one who was kind of the he was the leader.
Let the bonds of the slaves be free.
He was a little bit actor, he was a little bit politician, and he was a little bit businessman. And he had goals and he had dreams, just like all of us do. And I know it wasn't just going to be confined to Casper, Wyoming. That he was definitely bigger than that, and he had more dreams than staying in town.
The kid was so busy. He was involved in everything. And they say this thing, he was always making eye contact with people and always wanted to hang out. Like,
totally.
He was the life of the party. He just had like the biggest heart.
This tiny little person had this like huge personality, which I just love that.
Yeah. So then we meet Walt, the guidance counselor, and he says that he was the first person that Matt ever came out to.
I just asked him, what would it mean if that's what you found out, that you really are gay? It was so obvious that he had thought about that for a long, long, long time and was so afraid of it.
He says that Matt was saying, like, my family would reject me, which, they say,
lots of kids think that.
Of course. So Walt is gay. Walt was married and had kids, and so there was this kind of bond that they had where Walt had been there, and Walt had also had to turn his whole life around to be who he is, and so they had this kind of like mentor relationship. And now Matt is starting to have the support system of people he can kind of trust, Walt and some other people in his circle.
Yeah, he just has friends. Like you see all these pictures of him like in the drama club or like in whatever he was doing. Like he was surrounded by people. People loved him.
Right.
But then his dad gets this great opportunity. He gets a job in
Saudi Arabia, of all places for a gay person.
I know. And not only that, when they decide that he's going to take this job, Matt is at the end of 10th grade.
Yeah, literally right in the middle of high school.
And he was just starting to, I think, feel like he might be connecting to people that he could possibly trust when they moved overseas. So it was kind of like he had to start over.
I just know I would have been a super grumpy bitch if that had been my life. Matt seems really happy. Like, that's the point. Is like, he's not mad. He's not grumpy. At least he doesn't seem like he is.
He's
like,
to see the world.
And he's laughing with his dad.
Yeah.
You know, like, he seems like he's in a good mood.
Yeah, he's not resentful like every other teenager on the planet would be. I'm looking at you, girl. I'm looking at you.
I would have been like in my room listening to the Cass album of Miss Saigon. Really loud.
Yeah, with your arms folded.
Why, John? Why today? So we see the home videos, and like, I gotta thank the Shepards. I don't know them, but I want to say thank you for sharing all this home video footage.
I know. I mean, it's a treasure trove of footage.
It's
really
incredible, and like, they really brought us into their living room. Like, it's so personal.
Yeah.
But that we see them in their living room in Saudi Arabia on Christmas morning.
Yeah. Thought you wanted to be on TV, Matt. Thought you wanted to be a famous actor.
Oh boy.
Especially this week.
Oh,
you want me to show you where I'm working?
Yeah. Where are you working, Dad?
This is Saudi Arabia. Here is where we are, Iran. I get to work in Riyadh, the capital.
Just like hanging out, having Christmas, and we find out that in Saudi Arabia, once you graduate like middle school or whatever, like the kids don't go to school there; they go to boarding school.
Yeah, there's not like an American school for Matthew to go to, so he has to go to this U.S. boarding school in Switzerland,
which is where he meets Michele, our fabulous documentarian.
We were in lots of high school plays together, rehearsing for months at a time. That's how we became close. Matt wanted to be an actor, and he always told me how he was going to be famous one day. We never talked about it, but I know we both felt different. We were both frustratingly short. Sometimes we felt weird and shy, not quite cool enough, not quite comfortable in our own skin.
And they say that, like, we were 15 years old. We didn't have any, like, parental guardians. Like, our friends were our family.
Right.
Which, again, that sounds terrifying to me.
It sounds absolutely terrifying.
Yeah. And this, again, is like, he's talking about wanting to be a diplomat. He wants to change the world. He gets voted friendliest.
Yeah.
That's so nice.
That's so nice. And we hear from a lot of these girlfriends, and they just feel a little regret that they never had the big coming out conversation with Matthew.
Did he ever come out to you formally?
He did not. He did not. I always thought there was a possibility that Matt was gay, and I wish that he would have felt comfortable coming out to me, because I wouldn't have cared at all. I would have felt, very special that he had entrusted me with that confidence.
That's part of what kind of gets me too. It's like, I just wish he would have felt safe, and told us. Maybe it would have changed things, I don't know.
Yeah.
But, I think that it took Matthew a while to be okay with it. And, like, that was so many people's story back then.
Yeah, and also these girlfriends are exactly what the mom was saying. Like, when you really love and care for someone, you kind of know. And then Walt, the guidance counselor, is like, yeah, well, here's the thing, though. Sometimes the closer you are to someone, the harder it is to say it. He was like, just ask my wife and kids.
Yeah, my mom, the gay one, the gay lesbian, that's my mother. She's a gay lesbian, by the way.
Is she? She's a what?
She was like, when I did my first round of coming out, she was the last person I told.
Yeah.
So this is where we start to hear from some of his teachers at boarding school that they loved Matt, but they were like a little worried about him because he was the kind of kid that would take risks.
He had an innocence about him and a belief in people that I think sometimes he let his guard down and put himself in situations that he shouldn't have had to worry about, but being gay, he should have been aware of. It's kind of almost like some of the things that made him such an incredible person are also the things that made him an easy target.
Remember when we were talking about how horrifying it is to just go to school completely unattended, seemingly, with a bunch of other 15-year-olds? So at first, it's like, Matt was a world traveler. They went to Rome. They went to Japan. And I'm like, oh, wow. Like, alone? So I'm like, you know what? I don't see in any of these gorgeous photos a chaperone or an adult of any kind. It's just 15-year-old kids, like, in Rome, Japan, or whatever. They decide to go to Morocco.
It's him and his friend Kate.
Right, and they're like, the school was a little concerned that it might be dangerous, because we're Americans. I'm like, not because you're 15-year-old kids unattended in Morocco. Right. Like, I don't know if the school was there, but they make it seem like the school was like, be careful, bye.
Right. So they go, and Kate says, they were a little scared.
Morocco at that time was so different from anything that we had experienced before. It was very exotic. It was very beautiful, but when we got there, didn't feel entirely comfortable. So we were being very cautious on the first day that we were there.
And then this is when you start to realize, okay, something bad is about to happen. And Michele does an excellent job of sort of just holding our hand through it.
Yeah, so then we get Kate saying, all of a sudden it was 2 a.m, and we hear a pounding on the door, and it's Matthew, and he falls onto the carpet, and he's screams this guttural scream that I've never heard before.
No shoes, no shirt, just screaming.
I just grabbed him and held him, and we fell to the floor, and he told us that he had been raped, and he just kept screaming and screaming and screaming.
And we get this story, which is that Matthew had been out on his own, sort of wandering around, and Matthew gets pulled into an alley by several men, and he's robbed, and they rape him. He's gang raped by these men, and it's absolutely brutalizing to him.
Yeah.
This changes everything for Matthew. This changes the way that he feels in the world. It changes the way that he sees the world. We start to hear the people in his life saying that, where there had been this confident, gregarious, outgoing guy, now there's this sort of more timid, more reserved. I think his mom even describes him as sort of having the stance of a victim.
Yeah, his whole posture changes. He used to make eye contact with everyone and be very engaged. That is out the window now.
And I'm just putting myself in his position. But you're a kid who knows you're gay, but you're not out of the closet yet. You have this unbelievably violent encounter that happens to be sexual.
Right.
And you can't really talk to your friends about it, and you can't really talk to anybody about it. But obviously he tells his mom, he does tell Kate, and he gets taken out of school. He's brought back to Saudi Arabia to be with his family for a while. And so his friends describe that he comes back for graduation, and they can just see that he's different.
Yeah.
Kate told me what had happened in Morocco back when we were teenagers and made me promise not to tell a soul. Matt had left school to go home and be with his family. When he returned in time to graduate, I could see that he had been broken. I wanted so badly to say something, but I couldn't even tell him I knew. I mean, what can you say? A year later, a friend told me he heard a rumor that Matt was gay. I mostly just remember thinking, there was so much I didn't know about my friend.
So after this, Matthew's going to go to college. He doesn't really know where he's going to go. He ends up going to a college in North Carolina, and that's where he calls his mom and comes out of the closet. And Judy's like, he made me promise not to tell his dad, and I said, okay. And then I went and told his dad.
Yeah, then it was okay, I love you, click, Dennis. Which, okay, I mean...
Look, that is an impossible position for a parent to be put in, because how do you not tell your spouse?
Right.
But also, she says she was afraid that Dennis might off the cuff say something that he could never take back if he didn't have this information.
Right. So he's starting to come out to people slowly now. And he writes a letter. Again, they wrote everything down. And he writes to Nikki Pearson, his friend Nikki. And he's just writing this letter, I miss you, and it's kind of sappy. And then it just says, P.S., I have something to tell you. I'm gay, okay, I love you, bye! In so many words.
That's how I came out. It was Christmas Eve dinner, and I was like, you guys, can you pass the salad and the bread? And, oh, by the way, I'm gay.
Yeah.
My mom was like, yeah, we all know. Everybody knows.
We've been talking about it for years. Where have you been?
We can finally talk to you about it now.
Yeah, thanks for catching up, girl. Thanks for joining this party.
So now that Matt is starting to come into his own a little bit, he decides he's got to get out of this North Carolina college town, and he moves to Denver. Enter Romaine Patterson. So Romaine is the woman that I helped her write her book many years ago.
Right.
How long was this whole Denver period?
The Denver period was about a year. He was in Denver for just about a year. Here was this huge city, It was just kind of like this huge playground for him to do whatever he wanted. And sometimes he did really fun, wonderful things. Everyone was fighting over who was going to get to date him first. It was ridiculous.
Romaine is only a little part of this movie. And again, Michele is being so smart because Romaine's story's been told in the Laramie Project and in Romaine's book and, in the HBO movie and all the movies that were made. Everybody sort of knows Romaine's story, so they don't focus too much on it. The one thing that I will say is that, like, Denver doesn't go great for Matt.
Yeah.
The one thing that is left out of this is kind of what a great friend Romaine was to Matthew. She really, really looked out for him. She was really there for him. Romaine has this incredible story where her older brother Michael lived in Denver. That's why she went there, because he was gay and her brother John was gay and she was gay, and they all moved into this house together, and then Michael had AIDS and he died, and Matthew was a part of this world. Romaine talks about when Matthew was really depressed, like you could really see it.
But when he was depressed, which was a good chunk of the time, that depression took him to really dark places. There'd be times you wouldn't see him for a long period of time. You'd show up at his apartment and the apartment would just be trash. There'd be food rotting on the kitchen cabinet. Sometimes he didn't even have food in the house. I remember one time we went over and he had a radiator leak in his apartment, and he'd literally taken all of his clothes and just thrown them on top of the pile of water.
Romaine really took care of him. And so that's a little bit left out. I get it. You can't tell every story in every documentary.
Right.
But Denver was hard and not great for Matthew, but he had Romaine, and Romaine was a really important piece of his life.
Yeah, because she does say in this movie, like, yes, the apartment would just be in shambles.
Yeah.
And, he would fall off the face of the earth. He was so in touch with everybody, and then he wasn't. Those letters stopped. The phone calls stopped.
Again, I don't know what his journey was, but he was sort of slowly healing from the attack in Morocco.
Absolutely.
But, I mean, that kind of thing never leaves you.
No, never.
So he's sort of convinced to move back to Laramie, to go to school at the University of Wyoming at Laramie. And it's this guidance counselor that was sort of his mentor. Walt has this moment where he's like, I convinced him to move here.
Yeah. There are a lot of people that have a lot of guilt here. Like, a lot of people place blame on themselves for one decision they made that led to this,
Yeah, and the move to Laramie, he was really excited about it. It was kind of like going home for him. And he goes to Laramie. Okay, you guys, enter Miss Jim Osborne. As soon as Jim Osborne came on the screen, I was like, here she is, boys.
Here she is.
So Jim was like the president of like the gay group on campus.
Mm-hmm. It sounds like he made quite an impression on you, like, right away.
Well, it's pretty unusual for us to have, or at least at the time, it was unusual for us to have, brand new students showing up on campus and saying, I want to be involved with the gay group. It was real clear that he was not a traditional 18-year-old college student and all that. He'd seen a little bit more of the world than most of our students, it seemed.
And so Matthew was like super excited, and he was saying like he wanted to implement a mentor program for like the younger gays. Yeah. And Michele says to Jim, like, you guys must have been quite a pair. Jim is a really, really big guy.
Yeah.
He's just tall and he's big, and Matthew is teeny tiny.
They just look like such an odd couple. The visual of them is just like, but that makes it perfect, right?
Totally. And Jim calls Matthew a pocket gay.
Yeah.
I was just like, he's like a pocket gay. He's travel sized.
I feel like I needed a little bit more Jim.
Yeah.
I was like, that he's definitely could have been the comic relief here.
Totally.
Jim, if you're listening, girl, call me.
Life of the party.
So, if you don't know the timeline of the case, Matthew was not in Laramie very long at all before the attack happened. I don't remember exactly how many days or weeks it was, but it was a short time. And so now we're sitting with Judy, and she sort of takes us through the night of the attack.
My understanding is there was a meeting of the campus LGBT group, and then after that he wasn't ready to go back to his apartment and study. He wanted to go have a drink. No one wanted to go with him, so he went by himself to the fireside.
And we meet Matt Galloway, who's the fireside bartender, and he tells us what happened inside the bar.
And I'm like, does he still work at the fireside?
I don't know.
Because we're inside the fireside.
It looks like he is. I don't know.
Yeah.
So did he come in alone?
Uh-huh. And that wasn't an unusual thing for him to come in and sit at the bar and have a few beers.
Couple things.
Mm-hmm.
There is a play called The Laramie Project, which was written by the Tectonic Theater Project. Basically, this theater company from New York went to Laramie, like literally right after the attack, to interview all of the people of Laramie to sort of get the story while it was fresh. It's a documentary style play where the actors play themselves interviewing these people, and then they also play these people giving the answers. Mm-hmm. It's absolutely incredible.
I have stuff to say about that in my portion at the after party. I'll tell you at the after party.
Oh, tell me at the after party.
Yeah.
And it's a mind-blowing play, but the guy who plays Matt Galloway is great. great. He's like a great character in it. He tells the story that around 11 o'clock, Aaron McKinney and Russell Henderson walk in.
Oh, excuse me.
Oh, there she is. Oh.
Russell and Aaron McKinney came in pretty grunged out. Looked like, probably some local guys that had been working, and they ended up ordering a pitcher. I brought the pitcher to them. They paid for it with dimes and nickels, and was hoping that they didn't have enough for another one, because I really didn't want to go through this all night with these dimes and nickels.
I'm so glad we haven't said their names until now. Dimes and nickels.
I
And
know.
you, in my head, they were doing it to be dicks.
Right.
Or whatever. They are the guys, when they walk into a bar, you know where they are.
Yeah, totally.
Them.
And so Matt, being the social person that he is, he gets up and he's walking around and talking to people. And then Matt, the bartender, is yeah, I saw him over there talking to them, which seemed a little weird.
Which seemed very strange.
Russell Henderson and Aaron McKinney came in. By their story, they noticed Matt, figured he had money, that he was gay. According to them, they went into the restroom, hatched a little plan that they would pretend to be gay, introduce themselves to Matt, and they were going to rob him.
Who knows what of their story is real and what of their story isn't real. But we hear from Matt the bartender, and he chose his words very carefully here.
Yeah.
Because he doesn't say, I saw them leaving together. I rewound it. He says, I saw them leaving at the same time.
So now we meet these cops, Dave O'Malley and Rob Debris.
They get hero bells.
Yes. Where is she? Total hero bells. I love them both. I'm glad. Okay, good. They tell us more about these garbage pieces of shit. So they're just Russell was a follower, and one of them is and loyal to that dirtbag Aaron for whatever reason. And you know that dynamic, right? Everyone has either seen it or been in it and got out of it. The bully, the guy who runs the show, or girl, or whoever,
right.
The queen bee, and then the person who's okay, yes, right at attention. Russell was at attention, and Aaron was the leader of this really shitty 2-person pack that everybody hates.
Yeah, exactly.
Did I get it right?
You nailed it.
Great.
Hero bell for you.
Great, thanks. The cops call Aaron a consistent customer.
Right.
Come on.
We know who these guys are.
Yes.
So they get into Aaron or Russell's truck. I don't know whose it is. And Russell is driving, and they try to rob Matt. Judy says that he gives his wallet over right away. Mm-hmm. And then in their telling of it, Matthew, quote, touched my leg, and Aaron McKinney freaks out and takes the butt of his gun and just starts beating Matthew.
Right.
So they drive out to the prairie where we saw Queen Michele at the beginning of this episode. Mm-hmm. And, that Judy tells us that, Matthew she says that he struggled. We know he struggled.
He fought.
And they tie him to this fence, and Aaron McKinney continues to beat him until he's basically unconscious, and they leave him there.
There were 18 blows to the head and face. 4 skull fractures. The final blow was the one that killed him. That was behind his right ear, right back here. The butt of the gun came down and crushed his skull in and crushed his brainstem and torn his ear away. And then they found him 18 hours later.
And then cut to 5 a.m. in Saudi Arabia.
Because you have to remember, Matt's parents, his family, are across the planet.
Yeah.
Remember
I forgot about that. Watching this, I completely forgot that they were in Saudi Arabia.
He's also only lived in Laramie for 2 weeks. Mm-hmm. All of Romaine and that whole crew is in Denver. They don't know.
Yep.
And so they get a phone call at 5 a.m. Dennis says that we assumed it was Matt because he always called early. And it was the hospital saying, Matt's hurt. There's been an accident. You need to come home. And this part of the story I had never heard before.
What?
Dennis just assumed it was a car accident.
Judy's sister says Matt's story is all over the internet, the newspaper, the radio, the television. I'm going, what story? He was in a car wreck. I said, no, it wasn't a car wreck. So that's when it started to hit us.
So now we cut to Walt, the guidance counselor.
This, I can't.
Because Walt has gotten wind of what's happened.
Sure.
And Walt is the one that starts alerting the press. Because he's saying, look, the local news is going to try to gloss over this. We need people to know that this was a hate crime.
Right.
He's calling the press in Denver and Casper, all of the major news outlets, and they're all picking up the story.
All we wanted to do is make sure it wasn't covered up. It may sound like an exaggeration, but I woken up by the telephone probably at 6 o'clock the next morning. It was someplace like the Washington Post. And when I hung up the phone, it rang again. And when I hung up the phone, it rang again. And my phone did not stop ringing for 2 weeks. I mean, it was just overnight, the press descended on Laramie. I always thought, well, Matt, you wanted to be famous. Well, you're certainly famous now.
Matt had $20 on him. You
Right.
don't do that to someone for $20. This was a hate crime. Say it.
Yeah.
Call it what it is, and let's do something about it.
So now we're going back in time a couple hours, and we're cutting to Queen Reggie Flutie. Can we get a hero bell?
Yes.
Queen Reggie Flutie. She was the first sheriff on the scene.
Yeah.
Matthew's body was found 18 hours after he had been beaten and tied to the fence.
Mm-hmm.
So it's early in the morning. It's cold. It's October. It's not mentioned in the documentary, but a biker, like a guy riding through the prairie, saw Matthew, thought he was a scarecrow.
Yes.
And Reggie gets a phone call, and she goes, and we get her perspective on getting to Matthew.
Right.
And she sees him. She thought he was like a 12-year-old boy.
I got as close as I could in the car and then got out of the car because of the terrain and ran up to where he was. He was tied with his hands behind his back to the buck fence, and he was laying on his back. My whole point was just to keep him alive. My whole point is just to get him some help. And, just let him know that somebody was with him, he was going to be all right. You just hoped he would be all right.
Michele says to her, did he look anything like what you now know he looks like? And she said no. He was like deformed. And he was covered in blood, and the only part of his face that wasn't covered in blood were right under his eyes where he had been crying. So now we're back with the Shepards, and then Judy tells us about like when they get there. They're trying to get the Shepards up to speed on like what his condition is.
Right.
And the doctors say to the family, like, the best thing that you can do for Matt is to like not bring your stress into the room. Like he'll feel that.
Right.
So you have to go. And Judy said, we tried. We went in and we were like as calm as we possibly could be.
I mean, yeah, I get it, but what a thing to ask. Like,
yeah.
how do you...
This is the part where Dennis goes in search of the bunny.
Because I think he says like they were just in the hospital and it was like 2 a.m. and he was like, fuck it, I'm just going to go get Oscar, because they wanted to see if Matthew could sense Oscar. That would maybe be something that would trigger something or wake him up on some level. It was a last attempt to sort of get their son back.
So about 11 o'clock at night, I hopped in my truck, drove like crazy up here to Casper, and I opened up the storage unit, put on the headlights, left them on all night, and started pulling out every box. And I couldn't find Oscar. In a way, I regret I couldn't find Oscar. In a way, I think God telling me, you keep Oscar for yourself. You need to have something to remind you of the good days.
And it's like, all right, that's the universe at work there.
Yeah,
That
yeah.
now they get to have this true piece of Matthew still.
And so they just kind of know that if Matt doesn't die, they're going to have to make a decision. Because the doctors are explaining to them, the Matt that you know he's gone.
Right.
So you either have to keep him in a vegetative state forever, or you have to decide to turn the machines off.
And the cops say, like, not in a callous way, but they want to get the people who did this, right?
Right.
Matt's body is evidence.
Right. And so we get the story from Walt, the guidance counselor, where Judy says to Walt, and this is so brutal, but she says to Walt, like, you got to go and tell Matt that he's got to stop fighting.
She says, like, talk to him, like, tell him, like, just the wording of it that she knew, like, the Matt you knew isn't there anymore, but that's why they were looking for Oscar the Bunny, like, he could sense and hear things. And so what happens with Walt is just, oh my God.
Walt says, like, that was the most difficult thing I could ever have been asked to do, but I was so grateful that Judy and Dennis asked me to do it.
So I did. I went in and sat down and started talking to him. It was time for him not to be fighting, not just to stay alive, but that he wasn't going to be forgotten, that he was going to be famous, that there was going to be some good coming out of this, and that he really needed not to put his parents through the decision they had to make. And for his mother and his dad, he needed to just let go. Then I laughed. Said my goodbyes and left.
And then Walt says, and he died at midnight that night. And look at me.
I sobbed my goddamn way through this thing.
I mean, that was like, and he died. I was just like, oh my God. And then you get this feeling of, or people then get this feeling of, this has to be it, right? This has to be the thing that's going to make things change. Because if it's not this, what the hell else could it be?
Right, because what happens now is that Matthew's story has gone the 1998 equivalent of viral.
Yes.
Everybody knows about it. It's on every news station, and everybody is sympathetic. And then we're seeing these like rallies where Kristen Johnson gets up and talks.
Yeah.
And she's like, I just would have loved him. And then Ellen, I mean, this is so famous, but like Ellen gets up and this is is Ellen DeGeneres, like America's sweetheart.
Who was always bubbly and happy and
Yep,
never
dancing.
said anything. And, you know, she's like, oh, heck, you know?
Right, yep.
And she is her true self in this moment.
I am so pissed off. I can't stop crying.
Everybody appreciated it so much. So
Yeah.
Matthew's story has just gone absolutely viral.
Right.
So Aaron McKinney and Russell Henderson, like, they admit to everything.
23 and 22 years old?
Yeah.
Oh, my God.
They're children.
Yeah. So Aaron is charged with kidnapping, aggravated robbery, and first-degree murder, and he's up for the death penalty.
Yeah.
And Russell, the little puppy, which is like derogatory to puppies. I'm so sorry. The little lemmings. Sorry, lemmings. He pleaded guilty, and he's in prison for life.
Right. So the whole thing with Aaron McKinney's trial is that, like, is he going to get the death penalty or not?
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, it's this kind of incredible thing where Judy and Dennis Shepard, from what we know, are pro-death penalty. But by the time it rolled around to Aaron McKinney's trial, there's this whole thing about the Shepards deciding they didn't want the death penalty for him, that it was time to heal. And there's this news coverage that's like, basically the Shepards go to bat for Aaron McKinney to save his life.
Right, because he's found guilty, and
Yeah.
they step up and say, can you actually take that, like when it's time for sentencing,
Yeah.
they say, can you take that off the table, please?
And Dennis Shepard has this incredible victim statement, and I hate to use that word, but he makes this statement in court, and I'll just play it. But he basically talks about how, like, I'm giving you life.
On October 12th, my firstborn son and my hero died 50 days before his 22nd birthday, with his mother and brother holding his hand. He actually died on the outskirts of Laramie when you beat him. You left him out there by himself, but he wasn't alone. There were his lifelong friends with him. First, he had the beautiful night sky with the same stars and moon that we used to look at through the telescope. Then he had the daylight and the sun to shine on him one more time. One more cool, wonderful autumn day in Wyoming. He heard the wind, the ever-present Wyoming wind, for the last time. He had one more friend with him. He had God. I feel better knowing he wasn't alone. Miss McKinney, I am going to grant you life, as hard as that is for me to do, because of Matthew. Every time you celebrate Christmas, a birthday, or the 4th of July, remember that Matt isn't. Miss McKinney, I give you life in the memory of one who no longer lives. May you have long life, and may you thank Matthew every day for it.
And so, in the meantime, is Matthew's funeral. And again, Michele chooses not to cover this super in-depth in this documentary because it's covered so in-depth in the Laramie Project, in Romaine's book, in Judy's book. It's what we know of this trial. But basically, the Westboro Baptist Church shows up to protest, and, you know, Romaine Patterson and Jim Osborne create Angel Action, where they build these amazing angel wings to surround them. And it's interesting because I had never really heard Judy's perspective on this.
Yeah.
But she says, like, we just wanted to bury our kid. There was protests and counter-protests, and you never think that your kid's going to get murdered. And more than that, you never imagine that you're going to have to deal with this sort of chaos when you're just trying to lay your son to rest.
With everyone in the world watching you.
So there's one thing I really want to talk about.
Yeah.
Michele goes to meet with a priest. His name is Father Schmidt, and he's a character in the Laramie Project as well.
Yeah.
And he tells her that when all of this was happening, he was going to the trial every day, but he was also going to visit with Aaron McKinney in jail.
Because Aaron was requesting to see him.
Yeah. And it's his, I don't fault him for that, of course. That's his job as a priest.
Sure. And he says these things, you know, like Aaron was super cocky. And at first, Father Schmitz even says, you know, it was hard for me to keep my composure. Like, seriously, I have to be nice to this person?
Yeah.
And at first, I'm kind of like, oh, okay.
Yeah, and then there's this whole thing where Michele asks him if he thinks that they have good in their hearts.
Do you think there's good in their hearts?
That's difficult to answer. I believe this. There is more to Russell and Aaron than what happened that night.
I agree with all of this.
Sure.
They made an unbelievably tragic decision when they were very young, and they're going to pay for it for the rest of their lives, as they should. So Michele starts crying. It's sort of like are they recording this or are they not?
Because the camera's a little below,
Yeah.
on the side of Michele. It's a very cool raw shot.
It's very cool, and it's very cool that she decided to keep it, because she is crying and he's apologizing, like, I don't want to upset you, and she's saying it's just really hard for me to hear you talking about Matthew and Russell and Aaron being looked at the same way by God.
Yeah, looked at equally, and she goes, because I have so much anger. I'm so mad, and how can these people be on the same level according to you in God's eyes?
And I don't love his reaction. I don't
either.
love what he says to her.
I mean, she's laying so much of herself out here, right?
Yes.
And she's crying, and she's trying to keep herself together. And she says, I want to heal. And the priest says to her, I don't know what you mean by healing.
You're right. I just think it would be better if all of us were able to heal a little faster.
Well, I don't know. I guess we see this a little differently, and that's fine. I don't know what you mean by healing. I think that God put you and Matthew as friends. And, there are a lot of risks in being friends of someone. And you are feeling the risk right now and the pain you feel. And I hope you never lose being angry at this.
I was like, what?
Yeah, I know.
I know. I'm sorry, what? I even have in my notes just one word: Father. Period. People go to people in faith and spirituality for help and healing. So for him to say, I don't know what you mean by healing, was a big well, I'm sorry, what?
I wanted him to be her priest and not everyone's priest.
Yes, don't lecture her. Just give her some compassion.
Exactly. And that was making me so mad.
Yeah.
Because in the Laramie Project, it's not here. He says this whole beautiful thing where he obviously didn't want them to get the death penalty. He's saying it should be the opposite. They should be forced to live, and they should be forced to tell their stories.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what everybody is saying throughout, is that the way that we're going to get better as a society, the way that we're going to stop creating boys and men that do things like this, is if we can understand how Aaron and Russell got here. And we're only going to know that if they tell their stories.
Yeah.
We have to know their stories.
Yeah.
And Judy says this in another way, sort of towards the end, where it's like, we have to know how Aaron and Russell got to be who they are.
Right.
So we can make sure we don't create people like that anymore.
Exactly.
And I like all of that, but it's also like, just let Michele cry.
Yeah.
So it sort of ends with Judy and Dennis and Logan creating the Matthew Shepard Foundation.
Mm-hmm.
And Judy says this great thing where she's like, I knew that I had a small window of time to make a difference.
Right.
You definitely had a choice. You could have hid forever.
We did have that choice, but we both knew that we couldn't do that. We would have gone crazy. We would have been haunted by the fact that we had the opportunity to make a change and didn't do it. So we stuck our feet out there, and here we are.
And there is so much strength in that, because it would have been so easy for her to curl up in the fetal position and die, like I probably would.
Yeah.
People were sending money in from all over the country for his medical bills and for all of this. And she took all of this money and she created this foundation.
Yeah.
And she gave herself a voice. And you see her testifying before Congress and, going out and meeting people. And they create this foundation to sort of elevate Judy's voice. So she can, as they say, pick up where Matthew left off.
I just feel as if Judy has just picked up exactly where Matt would love to have started the day he graduated from college, had he ever been able to do that. It's the kind of work that Matt would have given anything to be able to do, and his mother's able to do it because he's no longer here.
She can go out there and be the voice that Matthew wanted to be. He wanted to be a diplomat, and she can go out there and say the things and do the things.
Yeah, and then it's they work so hard, and after 10 years, finally some hate crime legislation gets passed, and it's thanks, Obama. Literally, thank you. Thank you.
This afternoon, I signed into law the Matthew Shepard and James Byrd Jr. Hate Crimes Prevention Act.
And it ends on that very positive note. Judy's still out there. She's still doing great in the world. And my favorite line is that it ends with somebody saying that Matt's greatest legacy is a generation of advocates. Because, so many people like me came of age during this time and wanted, because of his murder, to make a positive change in the world and are doing it in their own way. And that really is Matthew Shepard's legacy. so scared. We got through it.
Yeah.
Michele, you made a great movie, girl. We love it so much.
I know. Love, love, love. Come say hi wherever
Please,
you are.
come say hi. Speaking of, you guys, come to our Pride show, June 29th, New York City. I think we've got like 30 tickets left.
Yeah.
It's going to be a drag queen extravaganza. We got a fancy comic. I'm doing my Pride tours all around the village that day for anybody with a ticket.
And some other surprises we can't talk about
Some
right
other
now.
crazy surprises. It's going to be so amazing. You guys, brand new this week. Stick around for the after show. It's at the $7 tier at our Patreon.
Yes.
A couple times a month, we're going to pop in where we stick around and chat. I've got so much to say about my working with Romaine and getting to meet Judy, and I've got, stuff to say about the whole Matthew Shepard situation.
Yeah, and I was just talking about the Laramie Project with a very good friend of yours, so we'll talk about that at the after party too.
By the way, you guys, I worked with once a very fancy director who directed a version of the Laramie Project with Romaine. It's all in the after show. Also, and if you want to join our Patreon at the $5 level, you guys, you get our episode-by-episode coverage of Serial, The Staircase, Making a Murderer, The Jinx, Lorena. I mean, it's literally 80 episodes for you to binge right this second.
That's a party in and of itself.
It's a total party.
Just saying.
Ain't no party like a Patreon party.
Because a Patreon party has an after party.
Yes. Girl, what are we doing next?
We are doing Say Her Name.
The Sandra Bland documentary, you guys.
Yes.
People have been requesting it. We really want to do it. I'm a little nervous.
I was going to say Her Name. The story needs to be told. A little terrified.
I know.
Really want to get it right, but look, we're going to do it for you.
We're totally going to do it. Girl, where can they find us?
At True Crime Obsessed on the Twitter, True Crime Obsessed Podcast on Instagram, and TrueCrimeObsessed.com for all our fancy everything else you need.
Everything else, where can they find you?
At Jillian with a G on all the things.
I'm at Patrick Hines _ on the Instagram, at Patrick Hines on the Twitter. So you guys stay tuned for the amazing trailer for Say Her Name, which we just watched.
Yes, we're both, wow.
I cannot wait to do this.
Yes.
And then our hilarious outtakes. You guys, we love you.
We love you. Thank you so much for hanging out with us and going on this ride. And I hope you learned a lot.
Me too. And come check out the after party.
Yeah. Oh, I'll meet you there.
I'll see you over there.
Okay, good.
Get the cocktails.
Okay, bye.
Today's Sandy Speaks is going to focus directly on my white people. What I need you to understand is that being a black person in America is very, very hard.
I will light you up. Get out!
Wow.
Now!
Sandy called me, let me know that she had been arrested. How do you go from failure to signal a lane change to dead in jail by alleged suicide?
I believe she let them know. I'll see you guys in court, and I believe they silenced her.
Do I think this jail have anything to do with her death? No. But moral responsibility-wise, absolutely.
If we want change, we can truly make it happen. Sandy Speaks.
And you're going to get...
Can you imagine someone having that as their ringtone? All their friends, breaking news, breaking news, breaking news. Bethany, answer the phone! In the name of Rabia and Susan Simpson and Colin Miller, amen.
Jillian Pensavalle! Whoa.
Patrick Hines. I tried to meet you on the... We're lovely people.
We are, but we get really obsessed, so now you're one of our queens. Oh, it's Queen Michele!
And loud.
We are loud. Turn it down, girl.
Turn it down and walk away slowly. It's okay. We'll find... I was going to say, it's okay. We'll find you. Yikes.
She took her earbuds out. She's like, I gotta wait. I'll get back to this after lunch.
She took the earbuds off and left them on the counter and can still hear us crystal clear.
Michele, come back!
You're making it worse. Patrick, don't.
I know, I'm sorry.
Somewhere Rabia is like, you guys are just getting worse by the day. I didn't even have it this bad, says Queen Rabia.
Michele is so young and she made such an amazing documentary.
I know, she's amazing.
Have you ever felt like nobody was there? Have you ever felt forgotten in the middle of nowhere? Have you ever felt like you could disappear? Like you could fall and no one would hear? Well, let that lonely feeling wash away. Maybe there's a reason to believe you'll be okay. 'Cause when you don't feel strong enough to stand, if you can reach out your hand. And oh, someone will come running, and I know they'll take you home. Even when the dark comes crashing through, when you need a friend to carry you, and when you're broken on the ground, you will be found. So let the sun come streaming in, 'cause you'll reach up and you'll rise again. Lift your head and look around. You will be found. You will be found. You will be found. You will be found. You will be found.
You are not alone. 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 Even when the dark comes crashing through, when you need someone to carry you, when you're broken on the ground, you will be found. So let the sun come streaming in, 'cause you reach up and you rise again. If you only look around, you will be found. You will be found. You will be found. You will be found.
You will be found.